So thank you very, very much for firstly giving the time and inviting us in your beautiful home here in Marylebone in central London.
In central London.
Fantastic,
That's right.
really, really cool. And I just wanted to maybe start by hearing a little bit about your story, because...
So my story goes back many, many years. We moved to London, England in 1953, and at that particular time, either the people from South Asia that came were either in the embassy or they were students, so there wasn't a mass immigration issue at that time. But in the 60s, that started. A lot of people started flowing in the 60s. So the things that changed my life in the early years, I remember them so distinctly. We used to entertain a lot. My parents used to entertain a lot. And there were three things that I made up my mind in when I was about 7 or maybe 8 or 9 in those years. One was I didn't like my name at all because no one could pronounce it. It was Nusrat.
Okay. In those days,
Noreen,
the English
Noreen
people.
Khan. And they couldn't pronounce it, and it was something that bugged me every day of my life. And I thought, when I grow up, I'm going to change my name. The second thing was, when I grow up, I'm only going to have round tables, and I'm never going to have long tables where the children are always pushed to one end and the adults are sitting over there and you can never hear the conversation. So in my personal home, I have always had round tables, and because that's our signature. Because everybody's equal distance, nobody's at the foot of the table and nobody's at the head of the table. And the third thing I promised myself, my mother had this very impressive living room full of crystal and decoration pieces and so on. And I said, and we weren't allowed to go in there as children because we were destroyed. You know, her cushions were always neat and tidy, and the crystal was polished every day and everything. And it was used just when guests came. And I thought to myself as a little, probably between 7 and 9, that when I grow up, I'm only going to have a home that's every room is usable and you can be comfortable in every room. And so those three things actually showed my own rebelliousness or assertiveness and helped me to become the person I became. And the second thing that I think had a big impact in my life was we had one of my mother's cousins come and visit us once. And he was a businessman. And he had been in India, then he'd gone to Burma at that time. This was before partition. And he was a very successful businessman. And he said to us, we were all children sitting, and you know how adults talk and they don't think they're children listening, but we were listening. And he said, you know, when you go out looking for a job, you do your CV, you package it, and you basically say, here I am, I will sell my naseeb to you for X amount of money. Do you want to hire me? And then when they hire you, they hire you according to their moral values and according to their standards, and then you literally become a slave to them because you owe them and they've hired you. And he said, well, when you go and start a business for yourself, you think to yourself, God's given me certain capabilities, and I'm going to say, I'm going to work as hard as I can and let whatever's meant to be in my naseeb come to me. And you know, as about a 12, 13-year-old, that just stuck in my mind.
Wow.
And I swore that I will never work for anybody, you know, in my own heart. But the funny thing was, it backfired on me. Because, you know, in those days, I'm talking about the sort of early 60s. So all girls had to learn typing at school at that time. And I didn't learn how to type. I refused to learn how to type because I didn't want to be stuck not being known as someone who could type. But then later on when computers came, of course that backfired on me because now I peck with 2.5 fingers, you know, and have improved since then. So those are some of my early memories that I remember. And I come from a family of professionals, you know, white-collar engineers, doctors, you know, people like that. And so I was so rigid that I never wanted to work for anybody. And I always wanted to go into business, and I did that same with my children. I encouraged them to always, and none of them have worked in professional corporate environments. They've all gone into business at an early stage. And even my granddaughters, by the way, came out of college and have just now started their own cosmetics company. So these are some of the memories that I have from my early years. And I grew up in England, but then I got married when I was 18 because it was an arranged marriage. You know, I had met my husband. He came from Pakistan, got married, and then I went back to Pakistan to live there I think I lived there for about 10.5 years. And then we decided to move to Canada in 1975, and we lived in Canada for 11 years. And then from there we went to California. We stayed there from 1986 to 2004. And then in 2004 we went to Dubai and have lived there. And now I have moved back to Pakistan for other reasons. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That's phenomenal. So out of all the places that you've been, which was your favorite?
You know, it's a question I get asked all the time, but I honestly can tell you, I'm one of those people, you can put me in the middle of nowhere and I'll be happy. Because I just always have so much energy, and I always like to, I know how to keep myself busy and active. So all the places were perfect. And maybe I'm talking about this now as an older person looking back, because everything that happens in your life happens because that's the person you're destined to become. So now looking back, I honestly did enjoy everywhere that I lived, because when I was in Canada, my kids were young, and it was a perfect place to bring up a family. When the children were in university stage, we moved to California, and that was a perfect place for them to go to university, and so on and so forth. And then we moved to Dubai because my son wanted his daughters to grow up in an Islamic environment, so obviously that was a perfect place at that time. So I can't really say I have a favorite, because I really believe I'm a global citizen, and I'm happy. I can be happy wherever you put me.
That's phenomenal.
I'm very blessed.
That's really, really interesting to be able to live in so many different continents. It's and surely it helps you grow as a person and have bigger visions and broader horizons.
Absolutely.
So your children also then went experienced life in different places as well, right?
Yeah, they two were born in Pakistan. One was born in England. Then they were between 3 and 7 when they were in Canada, and then between 16 and up when we moved to the States. And then, of course, after they got married, we all moved to Dubai.
MashaAllah. So at the moment, you mentioned that you moved to Pakistan for a special project.
I did.
I'm gonna ask you more about that in a minute.
Sure.
In a minute. I guess it's interesting to hear that from a really young age you had this mentality of I don't want to be employed. And so tell us a little bit more about what that translated into later in life, and how you got involved in business, and what the journey looked.
I think that I developed an entrepreneurial mindset. I developed it, I think, from the first reason that I developed it, because I got married when I was 18. So I only had my O levels, and I didn't even have my A levels. So I didn't have a degree. So that kind of was, it was a deterrent on the one side, but it forced me to do things that I wouldn't have done if I'd had the degree. Because, then I went back and got it, but that was later on. So I was always looking for opportunities on business, and I have been blessed with an entrepreneurial mindset. And so, I've been in many businesses, but obviously some small, some succeeded, some failed. But when I moved to Canada and America, I realized that the ability to speak, articulate yourself, is actually one of your biggest assets. And I was very good at sales. Fantastic. So I would go into sales, which were commission jobs. I sold vitamins, I sold real estate, I sold financial instruments. Wherever the opportunities were, I kept moving. So in a way it was work, but it was not work in the sense of fixed income. It was always work that gave you open-ended potential, because as a minority, I was a woman of color. I changed my name when I was, after I got married. So I was 18 and I changed my name. But I stood out like a sore thumb. And so I didn't want to be put into a box. And I always felt that I had more potential than what I was going to get paid for. I always felt that. Maybe it's because of the discrimination I faced when I was when I was young, because I faced a lot of discrimination in England at that time. Nothing's really changed. And probably nothing will change. So we just have to get used to that. So I always felt that just give me something. I don't want you to give me a salary. Give me an opportunity and let me show you what I can do. Later on, my tagline became, when I would go for an interview, I would always say, well, you can't really afford to hire me. And they would look at me and say, well, this is weird. Why are you saying that to us? I said, because you know what? I'm good. And I don't want to take anything off your table. Let me come in and let me put something on the table, and I'll take a piece of what I put on the table. That confidence that I had was why I would always get hired. And then I would prove to them that I was good, and I was good, because not only I'm not being arrogant, but I was good because I had to prove myself again and again and again. And so I didn't mind starting at the bottom, and moving myself up, because it doesn't take long, especially if you know what your strengths are and you know how to run with your strengths.
So, I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of confidence and a lot of self-esteem to be able, but at the same time, humility to be able to do the sales jobs that a lot of people don't want to do.
It wasn't really self-esteem or arrogance. It really wasn't. It was just that need to prove myself. Every time I felt there was a need to justify or prove myself. So it was that what I think pushed me to achieve, because I needed to prove to myself and to them that, I wasn't just,
So when you say them, are you talking about society or family or certain members?
Not so much family, although that could be a part of the thing. When I say them, I would say my employers, my peer group. I had a complex. I had a complex. I got married early, didn't have a degree, and I always felt I was the underdog, and I was. When you feel that your potential hasn't been realized, and you have more in you than what people see in you, I think that's, you can call it whatever you want, whether it's a complex or low self-esteem or whatever. But now looking back, it's actually the best thing that can happen to you. Because
it really pushes you.
That's what pushes you to be successful, and that's what's made me the person I am today.
Amazing. So I think it's really interesting that you mentioned about sales, because that tends to be the number one skill in business that everybody talks about that you should get.
I think that anybody who wants to be somebody, as a teenager, they should do telephone sales. Because if you can sell over the line without a tangible in front of you, and it's your voice and how you talk and how you get their intention, and you get used to rejection as a part of the process, you will not fail in anything. I strongly suggest teenagers get on, do a job in telephone sales on commission, not on an hourly wages, on commission, because you're not going to get anything until you sell, and it's that drive, because all you do is you self-motivate yourself.
That's amazing advice, actually, and perhaps that should be something that we take seriously, in terms of, in the summers, students have a lot of time, they want to earn a little bit, and we should encourage them to do this type of roles.
When we moved to Canada, I had 3 children. I was 24 when I had all 3 of my children. I had 3 children, and we had $1,000 in our pocket, and we were so naive. We had nothing. We took 3 suitcases of clothes and nothing for how we were going to eat, or bedding, or this and that. I mean, we were so naive. And so it was a sales that actually, if I had gone out and got a job, I would have got a job for, let's say, £100. I'm just giving an example. But in sales, I could do 1,000. It was up to me. It depended on how hard I worked. So sales is excellent training, because if you can sell, because at the end of the day, even when you talk to people, you're really presenting yourself. And so those skills, the communication skills, are extremely important skills to have.
How did you then go on to starting a business of your own, and did you have success in that?
So, as I mentioned to you, I hadn't got a degree. So when I was 27, my younger daughter was 3, and we were in a small town called Fort McMurray in Canada. So I enrolled her. So I enrolled myself into the school. It was a what they call a vocational college, junior college, and I put her into the daycare at the school. And we went, and I started doing a municipal planning course along with an architectural course.
Interesting.
And so so I went back to school. And then when I came out, I got a job with the city of Fort McMurray. I worked there for about 5 years. But on the side, I started building homes, because Fort McMurray was a little boom town.
Right.
It was a consortium of 5 oil companies, and they just discovered oil in Canada at that time.
Okay.
So it was like it went from nothing to a ghost town to a boom town overnight. And when I say boom town, it went from 600 to 35,000 people, which is a lot, So I started building homes, and I got into construction. And the other thing because I had a chip on my shoulders, I really did have a chip on my shoulder, and because of all these things that had happened in my youth, I always went for jobs that were not female oriented. I went for jobs because I said, if I'm going to leave my house and I'm going to leave my kids and go out and work, I'm going to go out and work for the best dollar I can find.
Of
And
course.
so the jobs that were mainly female dominated didn't pay that well. But the jobs that were male dominated, and they paid much better.
Yeah,
So even when I went to school, to that college, there were at that time 12 people in the class. I was the only female. And the instructor kept telling me again, why do you want to do this? Why don't you? I said, no, because I want to do this. And I didn't know calculus. My husband used to teach me. But I always went for jobs that were not your average female jobs, because I always felt, why should I go and work for less pay when I can do the job and I can get more pay? So it was a little bit, that rebelliousness stayed with me all the way through.
And that's obviously helped you achieve more than you would have otherwise, right?
It really builds character. I mean, once you get over the hang-ups, and the other thing you learn in life is accept whatever the hang-up are, because you can't change other people.
Yeah.
You can only change yourself.
Yes,
So you can't change, if you're being discriminated against, that's a big battle to fight. You can't change it. So you just focus on yourself. Make yourself happy, make yourself the best you can be, do whatever it is that you need to do to find your comfort zone. Because it's all about each and every individual finding their own comfort zone that they can deal with, knowing that everything's not perfect out there.
Of course, absolutely. And so then you got into building homes. Was that in a personal venture, or were you doing it with other people?
No, I never went into partnerships. That's another thing. I very rarely went into a partnership. Because I felt if I had to fail, I'd rather fail myself than to fail with other people. So it was my own company, and the company name was Tanza because it was all my children's initials at that time. Tariq, Alia, Saima, Noreen, and my husband's name is Abdul Samad. So that's how I came up with the name. But anyway, but I very rarely went into partnerships.
And then I guess, did that business last for very long?
It did.
Or
It lasted
did
for
you
about 7 years until then what happened was oil prices went from 40 down to about 8 or 12. This was in 1986, I believe, or 84. And so the whole town went from a boom to a bust because all of a sudden
the main revenue's gone.
They were pulling oil out of the shale, so they had to. It was a process of steaming the shale, the tar sands, and then taking the oil out. So it was a very expensive process. So when the oil prices went down, everything went down with it. And that taught me my lesson number 2, which in life is very important. Never put all your eggs in one basket, because we were so busy being busy and making money and doing all these things that we never diversified. We were in that one town with everything that we owned. And then, we lost almost everything. And so that was a very valuable lesson I learned, is never put your eggs in one basket, diversify. And diversify geographically, diversify from a source of income point of view, and all these different types of diversification. So that was a very hard lesson to learn, but one thing it does for you is that once you've made it, you've got the confidence that you can do it again. And the next time it takes you very little time, because you know what to do and you know how to do it, and you just get down and do it. The first time is difficult because it's an uphill climb, but we lost almost everything when we moved from Fort McMurray to California. And again, I went back to sales. I was selling vitamins over the phone, but I was making $3,500 a week, which is unheard of. And I used to work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock in the morning because my kids were young and I needed to do this. So while they were still sleeping, I'd be back home by the time they were getting up, But I made really good money, and then I went into futures and commodities, and then from there I went into financial sector. So it was just kind of evolving from there. But I learned that I would never depend for my family's income on one set of income, because you just never know when that might get taken away from you.
So you need multiple streams of income.
Absolutely. And diversify earlier in life, the sooner the better, even if it's just small things that you can build up over time. And there's so many things that one can, when you start looking at what the possibilities, there's so many things one can do.
So what about those who are in good careers and jobs? They have one main source of income. Should they also look into diversifying?
Absolutely. What if look, we're living in a very uncertain time right now. Jobs that seemed secure are no longer secure. And we're living in bubbles. Anything can happen to burst the bubble. Because we're not living in no currency is backed by gold anymore. So how do you know what's reality and what's fake? You don't. And so I think that doesn't matter how secure you are in your job, and may you always stay secure. I'm happy for you. But regardless of how secure you are, you've got to have other sources of income. You want to get to a stage in your life where all your basic needs are taken care of by your passive income, so that your other income, where you go out to work, should be a hobby versus a necessity. Because when you can get to that stage where you're not needy anymore, and you're working but you're not needy, the pleasure of that kind of work is very different than the pleasure of the work. Oh my God, if I don't show up for work, I won't be able to pay the rent. That stress, you never want to do that.
This is one of our main aims at the Golden Touch Academy, to help people get to that stage where they're able to have these different income streams, so then they can then focus on the more important things in life.
Exactly.
And then you can work for joy, or you can work for your akhirah, for example.
Exactly. Oh, there's so many things.
So, right now it's 2018, and I personally think there's never been more opportunities in the history of the world in terms of business.
Absolutely. Look at all these people that are working remotely from home, and look at the opportunities that online platforms present to you. Yeah. There's so many things you can literally sit at home and do, and you don't need real estate. You don't need those kind of expenses that we typically have in the old age businesses. So it's much easier to start a business now than it was a few years back.
What are some of the passive income streams that you would recommend at the moment, or perhaps that you have, or that you recommend your family members to get involved in?
I think one of the first ones, but you need money for that. So maybe it's not the first one. Sorry, I'll take that back. I was going to say real estate.
Okay.
Real estate's a great passive income, but it takes time to build up, especially if you don't believe in interest. I'm totally interest free. It took me, when I decided to become interest free, it took me about 6 years to get to that point. But you can't just go from one to another stage. It takes time and planning.
Without any leverage, it's very difficult
to get from having interest to not having any interest. So real estate is obviously one, but we'll have to put that on the back burner for now. I think although I'll tell you one business I started, and it worked like a charm. We were in Dubai, and at that time there weren't that many hotels there. So what I used to do is I used to lease properties, and I did a corporate rental business, and I would furnish them, and I would rent them out on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to corporations. So it was a corporate rental business, which, like the Airbnb, but I just worked with companies. That was a great business, because I didn't invest in the real estate, but it was still a real estate business. And there was a time when I had 75 properties.
Wow.
So even if that property gives you, let's say, 2,000 a month, okay, that's 150,000. Not bad. So that's something one can easily do. You rent an apartment, you furnish it, and you rent it out on a corporate rental basis. Of course, there's some work. When people say passive income, by the way, the definition of passive income isn't that you sit at home and do nothing. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Okay, that's not going to happen. Or remote management. There's no such thing as do it. You have to take an interest. It starts out as being what I call aggressive passive, and then it becomes passive. Because when you reach that economies of scale, then you can afford to hire somebody. Your eventual goal is to hire somebody so that it becomes passive. But initially, don't think passive income is that you're passive. Passive is that you're aggressive, but eventually it'll become passive.
Eventually.
So that's a good example. I had 75 properties, and I had a driver and maids and the whole team that used to go out and do whatever that needed to be done. So get creative. Look at where the opportunities are, and start small. Nothing wrong with. Even if you make 200 extra, it's okay. It doesn't have to be 2,000, because there's nothing. I always say, don't be embarrassed of being small. There's nothing wrong with starting small, and then things take a life of their own. And right now, online offers you 1,000 opportunities. Export and import starts. There's gazillions of opportunities. I have a small export business. It's not small actually; it's quite large now. So I started importing Rhodes grass which is animal feed from Pakistan to Dubai. Now, women probably don't go into this field. But, I've always been a little cuckoo, eccentric, whatever you want to call me. But I thought, you know what? So I researched the market at the Dubai end, and I needed the source of supply from the other end, and I started the business. And the first year, my source wasn't that reliable. So then what I did was I leased 475 acres of land, and I found the people, and this is in Sindh, in Pakistan. Yeah. And we grow our own road grass, and every month we get 40 containers. Every month we sell 40 containers. Now I literally, except for the accounting, which I always do in all my businesses, because I do not give my accounting away to anybody, because that's the one thing that keeps you on top of what's happening. So that's the advice I would give anybody. But I have a huge road grass business that does probably 2-3 million a year.
Phenomenal.
And that's passive.
And that started from literally...
From nothing. And I leased the land. I didn't buy the land. I leased the land. And within 1.5 years, I got all my money back. So my pressure's completely off. And I'm looking to get another farm now. And I've created 40 jobs.
Amazing.
It's an import-export business. I learned something that was brand new to me. I never knew what it was. But, the curiosity is what drives you. So there's another passive income that most people don't think. And by the way, for all of us that are up from other lands, that's a great way to stay in connection with
and offer
and
something
legacy,
to your
because that's your legacy, and because what a wonderful excuse to go back and say, and then bring it wherever you are. I think import-export is a wonderful way of developing a passive income and of keeping in touch with your roots as well. So there you have given you 3 ideas just right now.
That's amazing. And what I love about the import and export is you're actually contributing to the economy of your country of origin, providing jobs, and it's phenomenal.
You should always be thinking about them. Yeah. And you should always be worried about them and see what you can do.
That's amazing.
It's because it's not about you only, just because you're okay. What about the people that are not okay?
Absolutely.
Because they don't have any options. You have an option. I have an option, but they don't have an option. They have to live and survive over there. So it's our job to create jobs.
Absolutely. MashaAllah. That's really inspiring. I had actually no idea that you were involved in such diverse businesses.
I don't talk about this because it's a little crazy. I mean, when people meet me, they probably think, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a wife, and I cook and I clean and I do all the things that everybody does. But, it's not a subject I bring up.
Cool.
I never talk about it, but these are passive businesses that I have started, that I've done and against all odds. But you have to know what your risk is. Do businesses with limited risk. And the limited risk is get to know your market. Mm-hmm. So what is your risk? 1 shipment. Okay, you can afford that.
Yeah.
Okay, and do things that have a long shelf life. So you don't have that problem. So my worst case thing was I bought 20 containers of rose grass. And let's say they didn't sell for 3 months. Okay, it's not going to spoil. It has a 3-year shelf life. So go into businesses that are low risk, but you have to start somewhere. But don't be afraid of risk. Limited risk.
Limited risk. That's really interesting. So most of the businesses you're involved in now giving you a passive income, because obviously with passive income comes a lot of freedom to spend more time with your family, to do other things. I mean, we met each other in Istanbul and in Switzerland, so you're still getting around and doing totally some amazing things at the moment, right? So most of your businesses now in a stage where you've managed to make them relatively passive?
All my businesses are relatively very passive now. Because see, one thing is I invest in my people. Okay. I've got people who've been with me for 14, 20 years.
Wow.
I've got a driver. My driver, by the way, is managing my farm.
Wow.
So, because people have capabilities, you have to recognize them.
You have to recognize
Just because they're a driver today, don't mean that they have to be a driver all their lives. So, I've had people that have been with me through thick and thin, and I know them. And then you cover their weaknesses by it's the processes you have to put into place. Okay. And if you put the processes in place where theft can't happen, mismanagement doesn't happen, those are the skills that I believe I bring to the table. Right.
Yeah. So seeing, being able to apply systems and procedures and governance.
All my income right now, I'm just trying to think while I'm speaking, is coming from passive income. And alhamdulillah, it's coming from about 6 different sources.
6,
all good. All doing good.
So here's a question for you. If you were to start from scratch,
okay,
where would you start?
When you say scratch,
if everything was taken away from you,
no problem. No problem.
Where
If
would you look
everything
to?
was taken away from me, God forbid, as long as I had my health and as long as I had my spirituality, see, that goes back to your values. There's 5 things that you need to have in life to be complete. Okay? Your physical health, and they're all connected, by the way. Your emotional health, your spiritual health. And if you have emotional and spiritual health, you'll have physical health.
Physical.
This physical health is actually down the road. Okay? And then your family. Okay? And then your mental stimulation that allows you to work.
Ah.
Okay, those are the 5 things.
Interesting.
So when you say you took everything away from me, let's say you took everything away from me, but I had my emotional health, my spiritual health, my physical health, my family, and my ability to be mentally stimulated or curious. I think everybody must always stay curious. Always figure out, be curious all the time. What would I do? What would I do? Okay, what would I do? I would immediately, and this is assuming that I have no money at all.
Okay.
Right? That's the definition
that's even
of starting
better.
from
Yep,
scratch.
yep.
Starting from scratch means you have barely, maybe you can eat, but you don't have anything more. Okay, what I would probably do is I would probably go out and get a consulting job or some kind of a sales job. Because I know that what I have here, no one can take away from me. All my years of experience, once I had a business that failed miserably because of bad timing, mistakes that I made, whatever you want to call it. I can blame 1,000 factors, but I failed. And even when I was failing, and I was failing miserably, I knew something, that what I am learning through this failure, no one can ever teach me.
Yeah.
And every night I used to come home and I used to feel that somebody punched me in the stomach. And I would be sick to the core of my stomach, laying off people, and just knowing what a fine line there is between being honest and being not so honest. Because when you get put on that line, then you have to tell lies and you have to not pay the bills. It's horrible.
It's not
It's
nice.
the worst place to be. But I knew that I was learning some lessons there. So I think that I could be a consultant. I could go out and consult on things I've failed on. I could do that. Because I have the ability to convince people. And because not because I'm fake, because I'm genuine. Because I don't mind telling you that, you know what, I have learned from my mistakes. Whatever my life has been, it hasn't been a bed of roses. We've struggled. But I am proud of that because I am the person I am today because of the person I was the other day.
Absolutely.
So I would just answer the question. I could go consult. I could do a darn good sales job. I would start an online business where I would buy from you, sell to you, and get a 45-day credit and hopefully be able to turn it back to you. I could go to Pakistan today and find 5 companies who I could become their sales rep for. Over here, and I could get out there and put them in the market. So there's 4 or 5 things I could do.
Already. That's really, really great. And I think a lot of it I personally think a lot of business success is in here.
Absolutely.
Is in your mindset and in your belief system.
Absolutely.
Belief system.
Like I said, nobody can take your values away from you. Nobody can take your... Look, when I walk into a room, you will never see my bank account. You will never see whether I have a degree or you don't have a degree, and you will never meet my family. But you will make certain assessments about me. You will assess me for 5 seconds. Because that's what we do to other people.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you will say, she looks from a good family, she's probably educated, she's probably got money. And how do you know I have? That confidence comes from believing in yourself. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's interesting to talk about failures, and you just mentioned some, and the fear of failure.
It's very interesting. Sorry to cut you. Sure. It's very interesting to talk about failures and shortcomings, because we all have shortcomings, and unless we own them and recognize them and accept them, we will never turn them into strengths. Okay, we all have them. Like for example, when you have a business. Let's say you're not the kind of person that gives attention to detail. Well, you better hire someone that can give attention to detail. But unless you acknowledge your shortcoming, hire the people that complement you. That are not your yes men, but they complement what you don't have. You want to hire the people that give you what you don't have. So you have to know what you don't have first.
Absolutely. So then you can sort of bring the resources to fill the gap.
Exactly.
Sure. The question that I actually was thinking of is about business and faith. Meaning, some people say that if you really want to strengthen your faith, go into business. And then there's others who say that if you want to destroy your faith, go into business because there's so many temptations and challenges. So what's been your personal experience in terms of your business journey and your spiritual journey?
Personal experience, what I have found is I am always amazed at how challenged I become to practice my faith in my religion, and it's the most rewarding feeling in the end. When you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with issues, when you're dealing with, values, it's your faith that actually dictates how you behave in the business. That's what I think. I don't think that if you have a strong faith and you have a strong platform or foundation of values, okay, you will always go back to those values to address whatever the challenge is. Mm-hmm. I think what tests your faith is when things go wrong, and when you are hurting financially. Financial stress is a stress that can test anybody's faith.
Gotcha.
And financial stress is a stress that can test most people's value system. Because especially when you have a family to support.
Yeah.
So that's why passive income is so important, so you can avoid the financial stress. Because that's one thing, marriages get tested on with financial stress. So I think it's really critical that we get, first of all, live within your means and don't ever spend beyond your means. That because if you can come to terms with that, you won't have financial stress. Because financial stress comes from bad planning, and it can come from circumstances too. Things go wrong. They do go wrong. Absolutely, they go wrong. They go wrong more than they will go right.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared for them. You have to be prepared for the worst case scenario, because after that, everything's wonderful. And I think that's the problem. Everybody looks at everything from a positive scenario instead of a negative scenario. So in business, one of the things you have to do is, what if? Because it always takes twice the money, twice the time to get to where you want to get to. And like most businesses, start showing something in the third or the fourth year. But can you survive those 2-3 years? So you have to go into businesses that don't drain you.
Yeah.
And that's why avoid businesses where you have to pay the rent every month.
Right.
Avoid those businesses. Because especially in this day and age that we're living in, everything can be done out of my living room with one laptop. You don't even know the businesses I do. Mm-hmm. And I don't even have a personal assistant. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that we're living in great times where we can do all these things.
Much opportunity.
So to answer your question, if you have a solid value system, and that's what you really have to develop that, and develop it at a young age. Don't compromise your values. Because again, as Muslims, we believe that, it's so easy for us because we already know that whatever number of breaths we're going to take, we're going to take. We're not going to die sooner, nor are we going to die later. But that doesn't mean we don't look after ourselves.
Of course.
Right? We also know that the risk has already been written for us. What the decision we make, is it halal or is it not so halal? Okay, so why take that risk when when you've got this guarantee on the other side?
Guarantee.
And the other thing is that we have 3 things that God's given us: a certain amount of time, a certain amount of intellect, and a certain amount of wealth. The question is going to be, how did you spend it? So always keep that in mind. That I've been given a certain amount of time, certain amount of intellect, so don't waste your time, respect the money that you make, and get emotionally involved. Because you have to spend your intellect wisely too. Most people, and this is what bugs me the most, especially with young people, is they have the intellect, but they don't have the direction. They don't know how to spend it. They waste time on foolish things. Even the socializing, most of it is unnecessary. I'm not saying don't socialize, but I'm saying be a little elitist. Decide where you want to spend your time, or
Be
waste
selective.
your time. Be selective. So I think if you keep those three things in mind, and you know, I always joke about this, you know, the 20-80 rule. There's no theory behind it, but it's my own theory. I always tell the kids this: 20% of the people own 80% of the world's wealth, and 20% are leaders, 80% are followers.
It's statistically proven.
Well, I'm not sure if it's 20-80, but it's
roughly that,
right?
roughly,
so
yeah.
I always say
Pareto principle.
Yeah, and I always say, choose which box you want to be in. Okay, if you choose, it's okay. You can be in this box or this box. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with either box. But once you make that choice, know that you made that choice. And so you have a choice in life, and life is full of choices. Every turn of the stage, you have a new choice to make. So when you make that choice, so be wise with your choices. Yeah. You can spend time here, or you can spend time there. You can spend money here, or you can spend money there. But it's your choice. And then when things go wrong, even though you've made the right choices, things can still go wrong. But at least you have the satisfaction that you did the right thing and things went wrong.
Yeah.
But when you do the wrong things and things go wrong, then you start looking for other people to blame. But you only have yourself to blame.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, you mentioned young people, and I mean that's the audience that we're trying to reach out to. So what advice would you have to young people who perhaps are in jobs, perhaps they may feel unfulfilled and they want a little bit more out of life, or they wish they had more freedom? Obviously, we're big advocates of business for anybody to try and achieve something more meaningful and something that gives you more freedom. But leaving that aside, what advice would you have to young Muslims out there?
The one that caught my ear was feeling unfulfilled. I think the question here begs to be asked is, why are they feeling unfulfilled? And I think you have to do self-reflection. Is why are you feeling... See, sometimes when the soul is agitated, it's telling you that something isn't right. So you have to figure out what isn't right. Is it something that you're doing that morally you're having a battle against? Because sometimes you could be in a job where you know it's not the right thing, and you know you're not doing the right thing, but your heart keeps, your soul, your conscience, your gut feeling tell you, you know, that's not right. And then you start feeling unfulfilled. So why are you feeling unfulfilled? What is it? And you do need to reflect upon that. Once you've reflected upon that, you see, again, it's the value system, because when you're working against your grain, you are going to feel unfulfilled. And the other thing that I think really that I think is happening nowadays more than any other time in our lives is that we're living in a very me, myself, and I society.
Yeah.
You get up in the morning and it's all about me, myself, and I. How can I make myself happy? Da 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 da. It's all about that. And I think we've gone away from a culture where we were interacting with all levels of people within the family. They were poor, they were rich, they were old, they were sick, they were young, they were healthy, they were somebody you looked up to, somebody you didn't look up to. But all these things had a very balancing effect on us. And I think one of the reasons why people are feeling unfulfilled is like somebody said at Concordia. He said that, you know, I grew up in a very poor family, and then he ended up doing Harvard Law and becoming a very successful person. But he said that I felt unfulfilled, and I had it all. I had the money, I had the position, I had the status, but I felt unfulfilled. And then he realized that the reason why he was feeling unfulfilled because what he was doing had no purpose to it. No purpose. And so when he started doing same type of work, but with a purpose, all of a sudden he's leading a much happier life. And so I think those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Okay, what are we doing for others? Because I think even if you don't do anything, if you don't worry about others, you can never be fulfilled. Because I think that's just the way we're created. Because you've got to get up with a purpose in life. Yes, one purpose is to make yourself successful. Yes, one purpose is to make your family comfortable. But what about the other purpose? What about being a good human being and worrying about... I named my NGO Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a really cute story. So this archaeologist went to Africa and he put a basket of candies underneath the tree. And he said to the children, go and get the candies and enjoy them. And so the children all grabbed hands and they all ran together and they sat down around the candies and they enjoyed it. So he said, why did you do that? And they said, Ubuntu. And he said, well, what does that mean? and it means I am because we are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Profound.
how can you be happy when so many people are so sad? So I'm not saying that you have to be sad all the time, but you have to at least worry about why are they sad and what can I do to make a difference in their life. And I think once you start bringing that element into your soul, into your being, even by 2%, 3%, then all of a sudden your life takes on a whole new dimension. You need to get out of your comfort zone, spread the box out a little bit, and start worrying and looking at other people and doing something. Give your time, give your intellect, give your money. The money is the least important, by the way. Everybody, when they give charity, they put their hands in their pocket and they give money and they feel big. Oh, we've given so much money. No. It's the intellect and the emotions that are more important than the money. Get emotionally involved. And then let me see how many depressed people there are.
I see.
I make a statement. I say, if any one of you is feeling depressed, come and spend a week with me. I'll take you to some of the villages and I'll show you how these people live. And then I'll see how depressed you are and how happy they are.
So I guess it's perhaps twofold. One side of it you mentioned is about balancing in terms of having a reference point that, okay, I'm actually quite blessed. The other side is making a difference.
Yes,
and because
absolutely.
we're creatures of meaning, and just the daily grind without so much meaning behind that can chip away at your soul, and we need to find ways of adding value or making a difference and doing something
Think about
meaningful.
why your soul is agitated. And the word is not depression, by the way. We use the word depression very commonly. Oh, I'm depressed. No, you're not. Your soul is agitated.
Soul is agitated.
Because when you go against the purity of the soul and you irritate, it's like having breadcrumbs on your sheet. You can't see them, but you can't sleep.
I'm intrigued about the NGO that you mentioned. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I myself have gone through just what we were talking about recently. For the last 3 years, I was feeling unfulfilled. And because up until that time, I was involved with my children, with my grandchildren. I did all the things that we talked about, but I still felt I hadn't done enough. And people kept telling me, oh, but you've done a lot. You've brought your children up. You've done this, you've done that. But it's not about what people think. It's about what you feel. And I felt that I hadn't done enough. So this last year, one of my dreams has always been to own a farm. So I've been looking at Morocco and Spain and Malaysia and Portugal, for a farm. And then one day I thought, you know what, I'm sick of being a foreigner and explaining myself. All my life I have been a foreigner. I'm just going to go back home. I'm going to go back to Pakistan. I don't have to explain myself. My money goes a long way there. I speak the language. I understand the culture. So I decided I'm going to go back. And then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is amazing. A friend of mine had built a resort over the last 10 years. So he said, come and join me. Do something here. Because I need people like you, So long story short, so I'm building a little homestead there. Just a small house. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but nice, beautiful open space. And my whole purpose of moving back to Pakistan is 70% of the population is under 30. And it's unbelievable. And you think, how can that be? But when you go there and you see it, then it is.
It is.
It is. And 60 to 70% live in the villages. All the jobs are in the cities.
Yeah.
There are the tax dollars aren't being spent in the villages. They have totally ignored these people. They're totally overlooked in every way. So when I saw this, I went to about 50, 60 villages, and that was when we recently had our the elections. So I got a chance to do some canvassing for a party. And when I saw the condition of the villages, at first I thought it was education. Then I realized it wasn't the education, it was all about skill development. But along with skill development, you need job development.
Opportunity.
Right? So now my whole purpose in my life is to develop the skills and have people develop the jobs. But even while I'm waiting for people to come and develop the jobs, I've started this 30-day cook training program. In 30 days, I will train you to become a cook. Maybe not top-notch chef, but you can get a job for 10, 12, 15, 20,000 rupees in 30 days. And so if I can train 20 people in 30 days to become cooks, I feel at least I've done something.
Absolutely.
And so there's lots of other jobs like that. And I'm not talking about highly skilled jobs. I'm talking about skills that you learn, but they're not sophisticated
Yeah,
skills.
of
They're
course.
not
Anybody
IT
can be
skills.
trained in
Anybody
them
can be
from
trained
any
if they
background.
want. And so my second goal is to get people to invest into small businesses, not large businesses, small businesses that they can set up in villages. Like I'm like my next program is going to be on how to be a baker, and it's not a sophisticated baker. I'm talking about simple breads and cupcakes and pies and
Pastries.
Now, how much does it take to set up an oven and a kitchen? I'm happy to do it. Okay, I'm sure if I asked you, you'd be happy to do it, because if you gave me £2,000, I could set up a whole bakery for that. So what I'm saying is that those are the kind of things that I want to do now. Is I want to create as many jobs as I possibly can, and try to make as many of those jobs that people can do in the villages. Another thing I want to do is go back and set up the loom industry again, because that used to be a cottage industry in our countries.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's died. I want to revive that, make carpets and home products with a loom. And a loom is not a sophisticated piece of machinery. I don't want to get into import, export duties, headaches, so I'm going to get as creative as I possibly can to do these things. So my whole purpose in life is, and then the other thing, I did a course in permaculture. I want to create a small homestead of 100 feet by 100 feet. 100 feet by 100 feet. That's what, 1,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet? I think it's a quarter of an acre. I want to create a food forest and document everything and show people how to do that.
A food forest?
Food forest.
Wow.
Because on that much land, you can actually feed a whole family and make some revenues.
Wow.
Because you have chicken, you have beekeeping, you have goats,
wow.
you have all the vegetables, all the fruits. So that's the project
amazing.
I'm starting in September. And I will document everything, I will tape everything, I will teach them so that I can put these videos out and show these people how to do it and how much it's going to cost. So that it's all documented. And then if they want experiential learning, they can come to my farm and they can learn that. So this whole thing is, so my next stage of my life, because I thought to myself, I still have the energy, I still have the desire, I still have the curiosity. So I'm going to spend the next few years of my life creating job opportunities and teaching people how to create an income. Absolutely. Because that's what they need.
That's the most important thing. You're empowering them through education and opportunities.
Absolutely. Like, and the place where I am, we have Christian villages, we have Sikh villages, because I'm in Nankana where Guru Nanak was born.
Oh wow!
So I'm right there. We have Sikhs, we have Muslims, and that's beautiful. So we started with a Christian village because I know what it's like to be a minority. So I thought, let me help the minority village first.
That's amazing.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. So that's my next thing.
So it seems you're very much focused on your legacy now, or some sort of
because
something that
the accountability is going to be. I gave you a certain amount of time, certain amount of money, a certain amount of intellect. What did you do? Now if I say, well, I raised my children, alhamdulillah, that's great, I did this, but where does it say that I have to leave money behind for my family to inherit? I think it's all about spending money, not saving money, right? So I'd rather now put my time and my money and my energy into doing this. And people offered me money. I said, I don't want your money. I want you to come. I want you to see. I want you to get emotionally involved. Then you decide what you want to do. Don't give me money and say, oh, I want to help you. No, I don't want that kind of help. I want you to get emotionally attached. I want you to do something. So this lady I met at Concordia, she's going to come and teach looming. And I'm so grateful to her, because that's what we need. It's a little woman. She's going to be she's going to come and visit me in October, and she's going to do a whole course on loom and teaching the women how to set up looms and how to make, I think we'll start with rugs or something.
That's amazing.
Sure, but that's the kind of help I want.
So for those who are watching and want to perhaps get involved or visit or even contribute some sort of skill or some sort of program,
absolutely,
that's something you'd be open to.
I make one promise to them: come and visit me. I will welcome you, I will feed you, I will take care of you, I will be very loving to you, and you come and see and then decide what you want to do. It's not what I want to do, it's what you want to do. And so everybody's welcome, because I have not only a big heart, but I have all the space in the world to have them. So everybody's welcome. Come and see, and by the way, come and spend a month there. Take your next holiday and come and spend a week there. I took my 2 granddaughters and my daughter to one of the villages, and they've decided to make a park for the children.
Amazing.
And so, this with their own money.
It's literally a blank canvas. You can do anything you
Exactly.
feel
They had this,
inclined to create.
A pond of dirty water that all the water from the village with. And so they needed three things. They needed a dispensary, they needed a school, and they needed a playground. And so we said, what's the first priority? And they said playground, so that the children can play. And you know how much it's costing us? It's costing us $3,000, which is nothing.
In the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. Isn't it? And
Look
it's
at the
going to
pleasure
stay
with
for
it.
many, many decades
And
if
the
it's done
pride
properly.
these kids will have that we have a playground. So those are the kind of things I would love for anybody to get involved. Just come and see for yourself. There's a village right next door that doesn't have a school for girls. And somebody said, I'll give you the land. So come, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. What we'll do is anybody who wants to be in touch, they can be in touch through us.
Absolutely.
And obviously we'll...
Absolutely. Everybody's welcome.
And as an academy, we would love to
Absolutely.
Get involved and perhaps
And
even
come and
collaborate
teach.
on something.
Teaching
Yeah, absolutely.
is such a sadaqah jariyah.
Absolutely.
Come and teach, come and share whatever skills you
Absolutely.
have. And I tell you, anybody out there who's depressed or feeling low, I tell you, come and spend a week with me. You'll come back feeling on a high. Not because of me, but because of what you'll see.
What you see. That's phenomenal. I wish we could go on and talk for another 3 days. It's been absolutely amazing. We've covered so many different topics, so much wisdom being shared, and so much good advice. And most of all, it was really inspiring to hear what you've been able to do on your own against all odds. And the fact that you're still going and you have this amazing vision.
And by the way, this last piece of advice, the best things are where you're not dependent on anybody else's money or efforts. Start with your own money, with your own efforts, and then you'd be amazed how things come to you.
Phenomenal.
Keep giving your best to the universe and let the universe give back to you what you deserve.
Sure.
And so don't go in thinking I'll get a loan here or I'll raise money first. Just do it on a small scale, and things will just evolve. You don't need to wait for things. I mean, plan obviously, but don't do the fundraising first.
Right.
Just start.
Just start. Last question, which just came to my mind now, and I always ask this to all of my mentors, is if there was only one book you could recommend that I should read, what would that book be?
Oh my gosh, I've got so many books I would want to recommend. 2 books.
Okay.
Can I get 2?
Yeah, sure.
One would be The 40 Rules of Love.
Okay.
And the other one would be The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Oh, really? Never heard of that one before. I need to jump on Amazon as soon as possible.
Yeah, and The 40 Rules of Love. And study the 40 rules.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We pray that Allah gives you barakah to continue what you're doing and to achieve your vision. I definitely would love to.
Come and visit anytime.